Good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 2. I'm going to pick up where I left off from the last video and just talk about the assignments a little bit more. Hopefully this week you're working on your My Name poem. There's really nothing big due this week other than your My Name poem, which you will upload to the correct spot in your module, which is here. But then I wanted to just walk you through what the rest of Moodle looks like, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the assignments. I do plan on going over the assignments with you in person on January 26th. So that way you're really just handling what's due in any given 2-week module. But just to give you guys a heads up, because especially with the autobiography assignment, some of you might want to get started working on that. That'll be due in the second module or on week 4. Thanks to everyone who's been posting their questions, and that helps to add clarity to some of the stuff that I'm talking about. So if there's anything that doesn't make sense or seems inconsistent with the syllabus, you'll still have time this week to gain that clarity. So for now, let's turn to Moodle. We have the draft syllabus here. We have our first module, and we have our assignment rubrics and tools. So these are all the things listed on your syllabus. You really have rubrics for the papers, which would be your autobiography due in week 4, your interview assignment due at midterm. This is your literature review heuristic, which I'll introduce to you on January 26th. These are for your 3-2-1s, though you don't have to use a Word doc. You can just upload directly to these discussion forums and just type the text in there. This is the culturally responsive lesson plan rubric, the social justice standards, which will integrate into the culturally responsive lesson plan, and then of course the culturally responsive lesson plan template. So I'll talk through all these in a minute, but just so you know, everything is here under or on Moodle, and it'll be under the current module. Flipgrid introductions, if you haven't done so, here's the link for that. All these other modules will be filled in as we go. The only difference would be for module 2, weeks 3 and 4, I'll have the reading for you posted so that you can go ahead and get started on that anytime after this week. And finals week, you'll be there to submit your culturally responsive lesson plan here. So let's go through the assignments. I'm going to click on the syllabus. And some of the things I did this week to update is to add the due dates for these assignments, and they're posted currently under the discussion board. Right now things say they're due in week 4, or it tells you the week that they're due, but I added the dates, which are on, again, the discussion board. Generally, things will be due in even weeks because it's the end of the 2-week module. So for example, your autobiography rubric will be due in week 4, or your autobiography paper will be due in week 4. But you can submit at any time during week 3 or 4. So hopefully you saw the course calendar, had a chance to look at that. We went over the modules in the last video. Again, everything will be due. You can see I already updated this, but assignments are due Mondays by 11:59 p.m., so anytime before Tuesday. Your action research literature review. Okay, so let's talk about this assignment. Again, I'll teach you how to do it during the January 26th meeting. But this came from Melanie because she wanted you guys to have time to start thinking about your action research project in Ed 618, only because the time goes by fast, and it's helpful for people to start understanding what a literature review is. It doesn't mean that you have to commit to a topic during this course, but the idea of learning how to do a literature review, if you can do that, that'll make your life easier going forward. So the expectations aren't huge for this, but it's mainly just to get you guys started so that we're not waiting until another 2 months from now or 3 months from now before you guys start. But the idea is we can be looking at your practice as an educator from a variety of perspectives. And what this course will do will help you to think about your practice from an equity perspective. And so that will be an angle which you could conduct your action research project. Again, you don't have to commit to it, but in this class you would have the opportunity to look at 15 to 30 articles that help you address a specific topic from an equity lens. And so your expectation is that you would identify a topic and then 3 themes related to that topic, and you would have about 5 to 10 scholarly articles per theme. So that means for this literature review, you would have about 30 articles maximum or 15 articles minimum that you've begun reading. So we don't have to, for this class, write a literature review. This is not a 10-page paper. You're actually going to complete that literature review heuristic, which is more of a graphic organizer. And I'll have some examples for you. They can be pretty detailed, but it's not a paper that you'll be turning in. Okay, so again, don't have to worry about getting started yet until after I introduce this more to you on January 26th. You can see here during the March 2nd meeting, while you guys are, I'll have you guys working on your lesson plans during the March 2nd meeting, and during that time I'll be pulling you guys one by one to talk to you about your topic, just so that, again, the whole expectation with this is that you have time to think about your topic in Ed 16 instead of waiting until a later course. So we'll just have an opportunity to have a conversation about your progress on March 2nd. Okay, so this autobiography paper that is going to be due during week 4, you're going to read Peggy McIntosh's essay, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And then that paper does a really good job introducing privilege, which is often a hard concept to talk about. So what you're going to do is read the paper and start thinking about what privilege is and what privilege that you have in your life. So I'm reading Michelle Obama's autobiography right now called Becoming, and in it she talks about a situation where she learned to play piano at her Aunt Robbie's house, and her Aunt Robbie was the neighborhood piano teacher, and Michelle always had a happy upbringing, supportive parents, and a warm home, and she never thought anything different about her upbringing. And then if anybody has ever learned to play piano, you'll know that the starting point is always middle C. And so if you can find middle C, the idea is, as Michelle explains in her autobiography, that you can know where to move your hands. I don't play piano, but you know how to, where all the other keys are if you can locate middle C. And conveniently, her Aunt Robbie had a chip in her key for middle C. And so Michelle, every time she sat down, knew where middle C was. And when she went to a concert hall, her Aunt Robbie had begun a concert recital for all of her students, and it was downtown Chicago, and it was really fancy. And Michelle went, and she was confident, thinking she was just going to march up and start playing her song. And when she sat down, it was a brand new grand piano, and there was no chip missing in the middle C, and she realized she had no idea where to place her hands. And so what she describes, and I think if I get her line right, it was the first time she realized what flawless was. So that connects to privilege in an example where privilege is when, if you think about an educational setting, the way that you were raised matches whatever situation that you're coming across. So Michelle did not have privilege in that situation because the piano she played on every day did not match the one that she was asked to perform on. And the kids whose pianos during their practice, when those pianos were flawless, that's a privilege, right? So whenever, so for me as a student, I feel like I was privileged because I came from a home where we spoke standard American English. So coincidentally, through no effort of my own, our schools use standard American English as the language of schooling. So I have that privilege that I carried with me into the classroom. So that's one example of privilege as it relates to the educational experience. So for your autobiography paper, you're going to be asked to think about your privilege. And that's one part of the paper. The other part of it is what's called unpacking your cultural backpack. So you're going to have a discussion of your home language, your family history, your family structure, holidays, religious beliefs, music activities, things that matter, and maybe describe your cultural way of being. And just to have you start thinking critically about things in your life that were meaningful. So overall, you're going to be thinking about how you are multicultural when you might not have ever thought of yourself in that way. So part 2 of this paper is to really ask 2 questions and to answer these questions. What out-of-school factors contributed to your success in school? And what out-of-school factors negatively impact your success in school? So all of these things, your privilege, your cultural backpack, the way that you lived your life either contributed or in some ways maybe negatively impacted your success. So I just want you to begin to start thinking critically about it. It's a 5-page maximum paper. You don't have to start citing things, but it is a critical reflection on who you are and the way you were raised. And where you come from. Start thinking about it. It's called your positionality. Your midterm paper builds on that. So essentially you're going to identify an adult who's culturally and linguistically different from you. And so what you're not allowed to do is talk to a child. So you're not allowed to approach a child in your placement and say, hey, you're different from me, I need to talk to you. We have to think about who vulnerable populations are, and we can't just be interviewing and using kids. So your first requirement is to find an adult, and again, be tactful and thoughtful on who you choose. You don't want to just approach a stranger again and say, hey, you're different. But do think about somebody that you can talk to that would be comfortable sharing personal information with you. So essentially, you're going to ask them questions to get at their own cultural backpack and privilege, and talk about their out-of-school factors that contributed to their success in school, or out-of-school factors that negatively impacted their success in school. And then you'll compare and contrast your experience with the individual that you interviewed. So that is your midterm paper. And then finally, you have your culturally responsive lesson plan. And you will be working with on grade level or content area teams for this. So maybe on January 26th, if you haven't started to get to know the people that are in our cohort, you'll have time on January 26th to get to know who these individuals are. And by March 2nd, be ready to start working with them on writing a lesson plan. So I will model a lesson for you. And you will be evaluating it based on that culturally responsive lesson plan rubric that is posted on Moodle, and then you're going to write your own. So the goal is you're going to incorporate a social justice standard from Teaching Tolerance, which is posted under assignment tools. And these lesson plans are going to be ultimately shared with the class. So big parting gift will be you'll leave with a repository of culturally responsive lessons that you can take and use going forward. So a scoring guide will be provided for this, but the idea is you'll be turning in that lesson plan that can be shared with others. So those are the main assignments. It's not really heavy. You're reading, sometimes that can be dense, the textbook, and I'll try to include some supplemental materials, but overall this is not a real assignment heavy class, but you do need to work steadily on them, which is why I wanted to briefly go over these assignments for you at the beginning, because I do want you to start thinking about your autobiography paper, and I also want you to start thinking about who you might be interviewing, just because that might take some time. I think I mentioned before, and if I haven't already, for your next module, you're going to have to work on a school climate assessment. It's only a couple of points, but just be prepared to talk to somebody at your school site in order to complete this school climate assessment. Again, I'll go over these assignments in a little more detail as they start coming up, but you might want to start working on your autobiography paper and identifying an individual to interview. Your literature review and your culturally responsive lesson plan you can start once I talk to you about it in person. Hopefully that's helpful, and continue to email me any questions as they come up. Have a great week.